So I'm in the process of installing a double DIN head unit in my Mazda RX-7. I went with the Sony XAV-AX5500. It's the same head unit that I run in my Supra. There's a lot of things I like about it. There's a few things that I wish they would do a little differently, and it'd be a really perfect head unit. I may have waited to see the next model that came out, or maybe they'll come out with something in a year or two. But I actually got that for free. I was using some reward points through something through work, so it worked out well. And this is the head unit right here. And my RX-7 had a single DIN head unit on the top, and it had this cubby in the bottom. And the RX-7 doesn't have like a traditional mounting bracket system for like Mitsubishi's and the Supra. There's like OEM radio brackets that you can modify, but the RX-7 doesn't have that. They use this kind of caged system install where this will slide into the single DIN, and then these little prongs bend down to keep you from pulling it out. And then the radio will slide into it, and it's got these prong things on the side that kind of lock it in place. So to remove this, you need a special tool where metal slides down and it bends these prongs out, and you can slide the radio out. I don't have that tool. I do somewhere, I don't know where it is, but I just used some metal zip ties, and I was able to shove two of them down the side to get the radio out. And then once this radio is out and you unplug everything, you can take the cubby out. And the cubby is, I thought it was going to be more of a pain. I didn't know if it was screwed in somewhere, but it's just these snaps on the side. So you can kind of reach your hand in the single DIN, move over and squeeze those in, and then pop this out. And then on the RX-7, it has a divider plastic through the center that you need to cut out. And I just used a hacksaw blade. I removed the blade from the hacksaw and just used it by hand. And you want to cut that out. Now the head unit needs to have some kind of cage system, and fortunately I didn't discover this, somebody else did. Pioneer makes this bracket, the ADT-VA133, and they've got this gigantic fold-out instruction sheet. But this is basically it right here, and this is a cage system that's going to slide right in, and you're able to bend these tabs, so it's just like the single DIN cage that was in there. And then it's got these mounting brackets that go on here, and then this is going to slide in there. Now, the thing I like about this head unit is that it's single DIN here. It's not like a traditional double DIN where it's twice the size of this. Just trying to get the wiring in for this single DIN was a pain, because there's not a lot of room behind the dash. So this gives you more room for some of the wiring to kind of tuck under and get out of the way. But it also means that, at least with this particular kit, you're only able to get one screw in here. You can't get the second one. It does have this optional bracket for the rear that you could put in there some way, but it's only, again, going to have one bolt, and it may want to twist on you. You don't have that lower head unit to utilize both of them. So I'm not going to use this at all. I'm just going to use this single screw on each side. I've snugged it down pretty good. I'm probably going to take some RTV and maybe go right along this edge, and then on the inside here, just to give it some extra support to keep it from ever wanting to twist or anything. But when you do that, you're able to slide that right in here. Kind of a pain to do one-handed, but okay. That's able to slide in here, and then there'll be these screws that you'll be able to put in. And I'll show you what I did here. So it comes with some short little M3 screws that are meant to sandwich this to right here. And then there's a plastic bezel that snaps on over it. And if you put the screws in kind of the only hole that makes sense, this ends up being too far recessed in this bezel. You can see all the way around it, and it's not very flush. And you can't really elongate the screw holes or anything like that because they're big round holes like this. And if you made them wider, the coned head wouldn't fit. The radio does come with these kind of mounted screws, but you can't use that because look how tight a fit this is. You need a coned head that sits perfectly flush with this metal for it to slip in here. So you can't use these mound screws that came with it. If you could, you'd be able to kind of offset the holes, but there's just not enough room in here. So you have to use a coned bolt or a screw kind of like this. It did not come with them. Some radios, I guess, come with some. I have kind of a screw bin, and I found two that worked, and I took them to the bench grinder and shortened them. So to get that extra compensation, I needed it to stick out some more, so I added a little spacer right in between where everything mounts. So this will space it out the perfect amount. And then I needed some longer screws because they have to be longer, obviously. And I had these little stainless ones, and I had to take the head to the bench grinder to take off some material, otherwise this plastic snap wouldn't fit. So let's see if I can do this. Still got the protective cover on there. But that snaps on, and then it's got to be pretty close to flush. It's not really going to stick out too much, and I can live with that. Now let me show you what inside the car looks like. So this is inside the car, and it had that divider across there, and I said I took a hacksaw blade to it, and then I took a Dremel just to smooth the cut out. That's what's going on behind it. So you're going to have a lot more room without that lower din in there. And when that cage goes in here and you bend the tabs, and you slide the radio in and you snap this in, you'll have a nice kind of flush kit. It's a universal kit, but honestly it's like it was made for this car, how well it fits. So I'm going to do a follow-up video, and I'll tack it on to the end of this one once that is all in and working. I'm still waiting on one USB cable, and that's another thing with this head unit. I said there's a few things that I wish it had to be almost perfect. If I flip it to the back, it has two USBs that you use. One is for the thumb drive, and one is for your phone. It can actually do CarPlay and Android Auto, but it has to be plugged in. Maybe someday they'll have the wireless, and then the thumb drive. So I'm waiting on the one for the Android Auto. It only has one RCA out for a subwoofer, so you need some kind of a splitter cable like this. I really like Media Bridge. They make a nice one. It works great in my Supra, so I bought another one. Then I'm going to replace my RCA cable with Media Bridge RCA cable too. It's just thick and really good quality. The outputs here for the wiring harness, there's a remote out. There's no antenna out, so you have to tie into the remote out if you have a power antenna. And that means it has power anytime the radio has power. So if you're playing the thumbstick or anything like that, or going off your phone, the antenna's still up, and that bugs me. So I want a way to turn that off. So what I do is I just wire in a switch. I branch the remote wire. One will go to the amp, and the other will go through the switch that goes to the power antenna. And this is where I'm going to have the thumb drive. I made this little plate And this has got a mount under the dash near the driver's feet, so I could reach down under there to put a thumb drive in, and I'll probably rarely ever touch it, and I'll probably keep the antenna off. But if for some reason I do want to listen to the radio, I can flick that on. And I'll show how this looks installed as well. And I did the same thing for my Supra. I just put it right in the center console. The RX7 doesn't really have a lot of places to put a switch or USB port. There's no center armrest cubby, and the glove box is kind of too small, and I wouldn't want to try to run wires up to it. So that's it for now. Stay tuned. So I said once I had the head unit all in, I'd do a follow-up video, and that time is now. It's actually been several weeks, and I'm just getting around to filming it, but it's been working great. It is dark outside, but I've got every light on in the garage, so hopefully you can see inside pretty well. So here's a look at it from the passenger side, and you can see that it's very flush. It doesn't want to poke out or anything like that. And I'll say it again, this bezel, despite being universal, it looks OEM to me. I did end up running the USB cable that would connect to my phone for Android Auto and mirroring and all that into the glove box. I said I didn't like to run stuff to the glove box, but I really couldn't find a good spot for it. And I've got the remote for the head unit in there as well. The remote doesn't want to fit in this JDM cubby. It's just barely too big. I wish it would. That'd be a good spot for it. The USB cable, I thought about putting it under this carpet piece and having it poke out, but I didn't want it to interfere with the e-brake assembly or get caught in there anyway. So let's go over to the driver's side. And that little bracket that I made with the switch for the antenna and the USB stick is under here. I'm gonna have to shine a flashlight just because it's a little dark. But you can see it up there. That switch controls if the antenna should come out or not, and that thumbstick is for music. And you also use it to control the wallpaper on the head unit. I need to zip tie that wire out of the way. That wire goes up to the microphone. I'll show you that in a second. So that's the microphone up here, and I've just got a piece of double-sided tape holding it on. It did come with a clip, and the clip would have worked. It could have gone around this A-pillar, but it wanted to press into the headliner, and I didn't want it to dent over time, so it's just got the double-sided tape. So here it is. It looks perfect in my opinion. This was the MGW shifter, and I cut an inch off the bottom just so it would drop some. It still shifts well, and it gives me more access to the head unit. I'm going to turn it on, and I'm going to go over, I'm not going to go over every detail, but I'm going to go over some of the stuff that I like and don't like about it. So it's going to do the startup. It's pretty quick. It displays this message, and I thought you had to click close on it, but if we just wait, it'll go away. So that's not bad, and I think every head unit is going to have that, just for like a disclaimer or liability. So you can't turn that off or make it quicker, disable it or anything like that, or change the message. It is what it is. So it brings you back in to where you were, and I'm going to go to the home screen, and I'll start off with one thing I don't like. You can see all the buttons on the bottom: radio, XM, phone, and if I slide to the right, there's three more. USB port 2 is for the thumbstick drive, rear camera, settings. I'm never going to use Cirrus. I wish I could just get rid of this button entirely or move it all the way to the right so that the main buttons I use are on the screen and I don't have to swipe. But that's how it is. There's no way to do that. There are firmware updates, but all the firmware updates are kind of minor bug fixes. They're not enhancements like this. And I feel like every company does that. They'll advertise that, oh yeah, you can update the firmware, but they're never going to release any enhancements like that. They're just going to move on to the next head unit that they're working on. As far as how it feels great. It feels just like a cell phone. It's very responsive. Some of the older head units would be resistive touch, and they wouldn't exactly track your finger very well. You'd have to press hard. This is capacitive, so is very, very responsive, very fast. The phone works great, the Bluetooth audio works great, the radio works great. The USB thumb drive, which is what I use the most, that works great. It does have mirroring and Android Auto, and you can do Waze and all that, and I have played with that, and that seems to work fine. The mirroring is a little grainy, and I think that's because this head unit isn't HDMI, and your phone probably is. But it's definitely usable as far as mirroring. But I'm never gonna use that, but some people that may be a deal breaker. It has all of the basic settings that you would expect, and they're easy to get to. So if I go to visual, you can change the wallpaper. You can even click the plus sign and you can import a file off the thumb drive. I typically have it to red, sometimes I'll have it on black. As far as sound, it's got the low pass filter and stuff that you'd want to do with a sub. So it's got all the basic stuff. For like the mixer, you can get there by pressing Option and pressing here. So you can change how this looks. You can customize it. You can control your sub independently. If you want it more bass, less bass, you can even turn it on and off really easy. And probably the thing I like about it the most, I hate bright lights when I'm driving. I've been known to use like a microfiber towel and cover up my radio or even my whole center console, just because it messes with my eyes at night. So if I press Option, I can press this and I can turn off the screen. And you can see that the lights on the buttons are here. And this is something that Alpine introduced. I believe they're the first. They introduced this a long time ago. It's called blackout mode. And when it blacked out like this, the buttons would be lit up. So it was good, but it wasn't perfect. But this head unit, you can take it a step further. So I can go into visual, and it's got illumination level when the monitor's off. So you can set that to off. So now if I'm in here and I press Option and I turn the screen off, all of the buttons go off, and I can do the volume up and down. I can do next song. All the buttons work, but they're off, and I can press the screen for it to come on. The thing that I don't like about it is if I want to now turn my screen off, if I came in here to make a quick change, I have to again press Option and screen off. On the Alpines, there'd be like a 5-second timer, so after you're done touching the head unit for 5 seconds, it would auto turn off again. And I really wish this head unit had that. It'd be a lot better if it did. I wish that was something that they could do with firmware. But overall, I'm very happy with it. I think it looks really well in here. They do have some new ones. Maybe they're out already, but I heard they're going to do wireless Android Auto, and I've seen some sneak peek pictures, and I think they changed kind of the look of it. The bottom button bar looks differently, and personally I like this older style better, but maybe some people like the newer one better or can live with it for the wireless Android Auto. My phone's always dead. It's like 5 or 6 years old, so I always have it plugged in, so it's not a big deal for me to plug my phone in versus using the wireless. But I can see where if someone had this maybe in a different car that they didn't daily or that they did daily drive other than an RX7, they'd want wireless Android Auto, so they don't have to keep plugging a phone in every time they hop in. But there it is. Let me know if you have any questions. Hopefully this was helpful.